Hey Chris, Brad Solomon here. I may have a challenge with the data quality time for the demo tomorrow, so I wanted to send a recording in case I need to skip that meeting. If you would rather me do this live, I can reschedule and come back in at a later time. So I'm just going to take a few minutes here and walk through kind of what I plan to show on the demo whenever we get a chance to do that. And it's all around Snowflake data quality monitoring. So some of the resources we're going to use today is my demo system, but primarily we're going to use this quick start. So you can basically find this quick start by going to Snowflake quick start, or basically quickstarts.snowflake.com, I believe is the site. I'll send over the link to that in an email as well so that you can get this resource. And what that gives you is all of the information, including the code and the data that we're going to use, some dummy data that we're going to use to show how you can do data quality monitoring in Snowflake. And so it gives a good overview of what we're going to do. We're going to talk about something that's new in Snowflake called data profiling. You don't have to set anything up for this automatically now whenever you bring on a new table and have some data in that table. There is data quality profiling that is available. So if we go to our database explorer and we find our database that we want to look at today, basically the one for the quick start is called DQ underscore tutorial underscore DB. Underneath the schema called SCH, there's a few tables. And if you go into these tables and go over to the data quality preview, you can see that we have this data profiling category. This monitoring will be blank until you set up data metric functions, and I'll show you that in just a second. So if I step this table and go to data quality, I have not set up any monitoring here, so it's going to default to profile, and if I try to go to monitoring, it's going to say you need to set up some DMFs first. But I wanted to cover off the profiling piece, which does some automatic checks for how many null counts, null values there are in each column, as well as a min and a max value and the top values for each column. So if we go to our customers column, we can go to data quality, data profile, and we can see we've got an account number, the min and the max of the account numbers. We've got no nulls in there, no nulls in first name, last name, no nulls in the emails. But when we get down here to create it at, we've got some nulls there. We've also got a street null, a couple of state nulls as well. So you're seeing just right off the profile some of the things that you might want to address without even setting up any data quality monitoring or data quality functions. Now, while we're here, I want to call out a couple of other things that kind of go hand in hand with governance or data quality type capabilities. We'll get into how you advance the data quality with some very specific rules. But first, I just kind of want to go back to the table details and show you have the ability to generate a description on these tables and columns. So you can see here we've got a description. What I did, if we went to another table that did not have this done, so let me go down here to this email database table and just find one of these tables and show you kind of what it looks like if it was blank. We can generate with Cortex. Now you could write your own description in here, or you can generate with Cortex. And generating with Cortex uses the LLMs for you to be able to add more metadata, more meaningful context to a particular table. And I've done that with all of these tables here, so you can see the descriptions here. I have not set up assigned context, so understanding who owns this data or who is the steward, the approval, or who provides support for this table, you could actually add those programmatically so that you can actually have some of that who owns it type of information that is very important in governance. You can also go to the columns and see the columns. You can also generate all the descriptions for the columns. You could do that on each column, or you can do a generate columns, and it's going to generate all those column descriptions for you using the LLMs. We also have data preview, which allows you to see some of the data. It exposes some of the columns of data up here so I can understand what that data looks like. And again, you also have some lineage, which we will show that in our, let's go to our gold sales summary, because it's actually got a bit of a pipeline coming from bronze, silver, gold layer. And then you can see how things traverse across your data pipeline. So how that data ended up in the gold sales summary, where it came from. We can see it came from our customer and our silver customer orders here, which created that. We can also expand this out to see where silver is coming from to go further in the lineage. So coming back to our customers table, we talked about data profile. Now let's talk about how you can expand this to actually bring in more metrics. And basically the results, we can see we've got 5-minute schedule. We can see certain dimensions here that are being run against this, and then the checks that are actually occurring here on these particular tables. Let me go take a look at another table here and show you kind of what one looks like that might have a check being run, custom passed. So we know we've got 2 metrics that are being tested and all tests passed. We can actually open that up and see the checks that are happening. Now what this is, let's walk through and describe what's actually going on here. So these are data metric functions. So to build continuous data quality monitoring for certain columns in Snowflake, we have a data metric function that you can define. This becomes a schema level object, basically a DMF that's attached to a particular table or view or column that you can specify a schedule to execute that DMF, and then it's going to trigger whenever there's certain changes that are going on there. This is automatically going to record a measurement in a centralized Snowflake database table within your account. So then you can report on those monitoring results, and you can also do things like alerts and notifications. So what is a data metric function? We talked about it being a schema level object. It has a new table data type for input argument for column aggregate metrics. So we can see here, you basically programmatically can set up your new data metric function. This is going to return that value that I talked about to that Snowflake table. Some of the metrics that we have, and we're adding to these constantly, are in the areas of freshness, accuracy, uniqueness, volume. We also are going to be adding things like outliers and basically abnormality type of DMFs that will take a look for those outliers. Again, a column can have multiple data metrics associated with it. The same metric can also be associated with multiple columns. Measurement frequency is set at the table. So whenever you set that, create that data metric function, you're going to set that schedule, and that's going to be at the table level. So all columns in that table that you've set up a function or applied a function to are going to run on the same schedule. As I mentioned, there is a database, centralized table for showing you the actual results. And the key benefits of doing your basic or entry data quality is to give you something out of the box with Snowflake, the most common basic things like null checks and variances like that, rather than having to go out and buy a third-party tool, all within one platform. So how it works is you define the data metric function, you set the frequency, then you associate that data metric function. As we said, it's a schema level object, so it's a standalone object all by itself that once you create that data metric function, it's sitting in the background ready to be applied to any tables across your entire ecosystem as you see fit. Once you associate a DMF with a table and set that up, those results are going to write to that Snowflake table for the data quality results and on the schedule that you have requested. You can then, from that table of results, set up an alert to receive notifications when a DMF detects any abnormalities or anomalies. So first we would set up our data metric function. I'm going to show you an example of this, and that quick start walks you through how you set these up as well. And then basically you set your frequency, you associate with a table. You can see some of the code here. We're going to walk through that. And then this is just finally how you would set up the privileges to make sure someone can walk through and do the things that we're going to do in the quick start today. So let's go ahead and hop back over to that quick start and kind of walk down through it. As we mentioned, we showed data profiling. We're going to show setting up the data metric function, how you look at the data quality monitoring in Snowflake, in Snowsight, and we've already showed some of the data lineage and the scanning results from the Snowsight UI a little bit earlier. I talked about those. So we talked about the profiling statistics. We also just now talked about setting up the data quality monitoring rules. Let's walk in and look at this and what this quick start does. So first of all, you're going to set up your environment. Here's all the code that's going to come with this quick start. Again, once you download that from that quick start page, you will have this code. You can simply copy and paste this and run that in a worksheet or a workspace within Snowflake. That's going to set up your different tables, your customer table customer orders as well. And so basically we're just showing that we're creating a sample data set, and there's a couple quality issues that we've put into this data set that we're going to do. So now you're actually going to copy and insert those values into the tables that you just created with this code here. We're going to create our silver layer. This is the code to create that silver layer. And then that gold layer table that we showed the lineage for, that's basically pulling together information. So this is your actual distribution data set that you're going to use, and we're going to apply some data metric functions to this. So we showed that data quality profiling tab earlier, and the first step in data quality is really looking at that profiling statistics page that we talked about. That gives you basically a quick visual into how many nulls there are, the null percentage, min and max value, as well as the top values that are represented in that column. Now, let's dive into some of the best practices with setting up the data metric functions. So again, that code is all here, granting those privileges so somebody can actually run the proper checks using the right role. We can set up the monitoring on our bronze layer. So we're going to alter the table of customer orders. We're going to set a data metric schedule for 5 minutes. Then we're going to alter the table of customer orders and add a data metric function. You can see the 3 different functions we're adding there: null count, freshness, row count. We're going to do the same thing for the silver layer. Then we're going to do a DMF that actually compares between the two tables. So we're going to say table 1, table 2, and we're going to basically compare those so that if you have any abnormalities, one has less entries than another, you know you've got some kind of issues there. You want to have the same exact entries in your raw column as you do in your target column. So this would help you surface certain checks that go along with that. So we also set up some additional checks here called these associate checks. And we also set up the gold table layer checks. We're going to assign those functions to the gold layer with a 5-minute schedule. So let's go over and take a look within Snowflake, within my demo. We're going to go over here. We've got all of those columns we talked about before, but I also am going to show you fairly quickly here. In our workspaces, I actually moved all of that quick start over here, and this is where I ran all of that information. So you can see what it looks like outside of the quick start. I've actually just ran all of that information, the queries that I've run over here that gave me the results that I was looking for. And if I scan down to the bottom here, we can see that this is where I altered the gold sales summary table and set up those DMFs. That's what's going to give us those results that we were looking for. If I come back over to my Catalog Explorer, and I go down and find my data quality database here. once again, here's my tables. You can see the DMFs that we set up here. But if we go into our gold sales summary, we'll start there since it's our main one that we're looking at and consuming data from. We can see we've got that profiling information that we talked about here, but our DMF are actually running. We can see that it's running one, it's running one DMF and it passed 100%. Uniqueness, 1 by 1 passed. We can see what those checks are here, associated column values, and that it passed. And any trends and any invalid values would show up here. As another example, if we look at our customer orders, we can see that freshness and accuracy have a couple that did not pass. So we can see we've got a check failed here, 0, 1 passed. And then we've got a null count, and this one was 1 null count here as well. So that's the data quality pieces, how you would set up some of those things. And you can do custom DMFs as well. I showed you the out-of-the-box DMFs, but you can set up custom DMFs to take the data quality monitoring a bit further and more complex scenarios that you are interested in. And most likely you've already used alerts and notifications on other areas of Snowflake. With the data quality monitoring, there's not a different way to do that. It's basically following the same process. So what you would do is set up a notification integration, determine your recipients in that notification integration, make sure that you have the proper control privileges, set the database or up for notifications, as I mentioned, DMFs do not have the anything different than this, so you would follow the same programmatic way of setting up those notifications and alerts. So in this case, you would then go in and set up an alert on your data quality monitoring results that you want to set up, and you would use that notification that you set up. So you would call that notification that you set up that would then send emails and the proper information to that end user to notify them that there were a data quality check that failed potentially. So some little bit of information here on best practices and a little bit around workflow. So most of the information or the data quality results are right at your fingertips with the data profiling. Once you set up your schedule monitoring, associate DMFs, you can then monitor those results right from your SnowSite view now. In the past, we had to have the alert go out and somebody would have to go in and take a look at that data and look at the data itself rather than be able to see that in a dashboard, which you can now see within Snowflake's data quality monitoring results, which if we go back and take a look at what those look like, once again, we're in the catalog, we can see orders, we go to data quality, and from the data quality pane, you have your data profiling and your monitoring results. Another thing that we can see in here that I didn't talk about before is when it was last scheduled and what the row count is for this particular table. So you can see the various different columns there. And then from the monitoring tab, that once again, as a refresher, that's where your DMF checks are actually occurring. So you can see you've got custom ones. We haven't built any for this today. So as a final closing to the call today, let me show some of the documentation on a custom DMF. All right, so to create a custom DMF, you basically create or replace metric function. You basically, in this case, what I want to do is set up a column validation that validates a particular column is only 5 characters long, not 4 or less, not 6 or above. So I'm setting up the column length. I'll apply that to the column that I want. And basically this is going to then return the number of records that don't meet the 5 column character requirement. It'll handle nulls as a violation here as well. However, if they're null, they would also show up in the null check. So you might have duplicate stuff here. So you might want to expand the DMF to exclude nulls. to keep it simple. I haven't done that in this instance. Once you have that custom DMF created, you simply do the same steps that you did with the out-of-the-box DMFs. You're going to associate to the table, schedule how it runs, and basically there you go. Then you'll have those custom DMFs being able to run. And an example here would be if you wanted to do some type of validation of an actual column for size, or maybe you have various entries. You could basically have drop downs for, say, 5 or 6 different selections. You could set up a DMF for anything that's not across those 5 or 6 selections if there was a fat finger or something like that. You would test it, monitor results, and basically use this going forward as you would with the out-of-the-box data metric functions as well. And so that really wraps up everything that I wanted to show today around the data quality capabilities within Snowflake. Again, we also have some other quick starts out there that go into some custom applications that are available from Marketplace that have been preset, that some our partners have set up some preset data metric functions, and they're basically packaging those so you don't have to go through this setup. But it is relatively easy. So I would recommend just getting started with the out-of-the-box Snowflake DMFs and maybe adding some custom DMFs and see how those work out for you. But if you find that you're not able to accomplish everything that you need, we do have third parties that, like Soda and Calibra, have data quality products as well that we integrate with in many of our customer accounts. So you don't have to be limited to just the capabilities of Snowflake. However, they are a great place to start. They're already available and very low cost to you. You don't have to get additional licenses or so on. You just start using it in Snowflake. So I thank you for your time. And if we need to have a deeper dive or help you set up some of your data metric functions, happy to do that on a follow-up call.